So for one joke about body wash, I'm suddenly this evil, toxic monster, right? At least that's what my best friend told me. And then he was just gone, vanished. And I'm just trying to figure out, I mean, really, was it that bad? When it was just us, it was perfect. Honestly, Sila's wasn't complicated. He was a woodworker, a carpenter, and his world was made of tangible things. The grain of a piece of cherry wood, the sharp scent of pine, the satisfying heft of a well-made joint. His hands were always a little rough, smelling faintly of sawdust and varnish, but they were so gentle. God, I remember the day he brought home the bookshelf. He was covered in wood shavings, beaming, so proud because he'd made it for me from a discarded piece of oak. It was a little uneven on one side, but he'd carved tiny, almost hidden leaves into the legs. Our apartment was filled with these small, imperfect, love-filled things. That was our world, and in it, I felt completely safe. The problem started when I tried to drag our world into Vanessa's. Vanessa is my best friend, or was, I guess. Her world is different. It's a world governed by unspoken rules, a place of brunch reservations you have to make a month in advance, of casually mentioning a weekend trip to a vineyard, of handbags that have names and wait lists. It's a world where everyone is constantly, subtly, sizing everyone else up through a series of backhanded compliments and questions designed to trip you up. Oh, Myra, that brand is so interesting, very niche. And I wanted in. I was so desperate to prove I belonged there that I understood the rules. And Sila's, my wonderful, solid Sila's, he didn't fit. He didn't have the right vocabulary for wine. He'd just say if he liked it or not. He wore a digital watch he'd had since high school because it was reliable. His best stories were about finding a rare piece of burl wood, not about closing a deal. When I'd bring him to their parties, I could feel this knot of anxiety tightening in my stomach. I'd start watching him through their eyes. I'd see his worn-out work boots next to their polished loafers. I'd hear his genuine, loud laugh cut through their polite, restrained chuckles. And this hot flush of embarrassment would just wash over me. It was an ugly feeling, a betrayal, but I couldn't stop it. So I started tweaking him. That's the only word for it. It was a quiet campaign of gradual erasure. It was me saying, "Hey, babe, that old watch is great, but wouldn't this sleek one I saw look so handsome on you?" It was me buying him these stiff, slim-fit shirts and hiding his comfortable, faded flannels at the back of the closet. I even once told him, after he told a funny story about a stubborn raccoon at the workshop, that maybe he should save the folksy stuff for when it was just us. I called it upgrading his style. I told myself I was helping him, giving him the social armor he needed to navigate my world. He never fought me on it, not once. That was the thing about Sila's. He hated conflict more than anything. He'd just look at the new shirt or the new watch, and this light in his eyes would just dim for a second. It wasn't anger. It was something quieter, a flicker of hurt before he'd put his mask back on. He'd just nod and say, "Okay, Myra, if you like it." He'd wear the uncomfortable clothes, constantly pulling at the collar like he couldn't breathe. He was there, but he was a ghost of himself, a man in a costume. I was so busy trying to turn him into a man my friends would approve of, I didn't realize I was sanding down every beautiful, unique edge of the man I actually loved. That became our routine. Me pushing for more, for better, for different, and him silently, slowly, giving pieces of himself away to keep the peace. The whole thing came crashing down at Vanessa's dinner party. It was one of her intimate gatherings, which meant 10 people packed around a dining table too big for her apartment, all trying to one-up each other with stories of their recent travels or acquisitions. Sila's didn't want to go. I remember him standing in the bedroom doorway, looking at the stiff, dark gray shirt I'd laid out for him. It was a brand my friends approved of, all clean lines and muted colors, and it looked completely alien on him. "Myra, can't we just stay in?" he'd asked, his voice low. "We could get takeout, watch that movie you wanted to see." There was a deep weariness in his voice, a quiet plea that I should have heard. It was a red flag flapping in a hurricane, but I just saw it as him being difficult, of him not understanding what I needed. "Don't be like that," I'd said, my tone a little too sharp. "It's important to me. Just try to have a good time, okay? For me." He put on the shirt. He looked handsome, of course, but he also looked like he was in a cage. He kept rolling his shoulders, pulling at the collar. At the party, he was the perfect ghost. He stood by my side, a fixed, polite smile on his face, holding a glass of wine he barely touched. He was trying, I could see that. He was trying so hard for me. He listened intently to a story about someone's disastrous but glamorous trip to Mykonos, nodding at all the right moments. He was a perfect imitation of one of them, and it broke my heart a little, but it also, shamefully, made me feel relieved. The conversation, as it always did, eventually turned to matters of taste. It was the main event. Vanessa had just bought some absurdly expensive, niche perfume from a trip to Paris, and she was letting everyone smell the stopper. "It has notes of petrichor and forgotten libraries," she announced, and everyone nodded seriously, murmuring things like complex and evocative. I felt that familiar anxiety creeping up my spine, that desperate, clawing need to prove that we belonged, that I belonged. I glanced at Silas, who was just listening politely, a small, unreadable smile on his face. A wave of irrational panic hit me. He was going to say something wrong. He was going to say it smelled like rain or old books, and they would all exchange those tiny, pitying smiles. Then, he stood up to get a glass of water from the kitchen. As he passed by Vanessa's chair, she leaned in slightly and smiled. "Oh, Silas, you smell so clean and fresh." It was a genuine compliment, I think. She wasn't being malicious. But in my hyper-vigilant, insecure brain, it felt like a spotlight. It felt like she was pointing out that he didn't smell like sandalwood and oud, that he just smelled basic. Like soap, it was a confirmation of my deepest fear, that he was simple and that his simplicity reflected on me. My mouth opened. The words just came out before I could even think. It was like a reflex, a horrible, toxic defense mechanism designed to distance myself from him, to put myself on their side of the invisible line. I laughed, a bright, brittle sound that didn't reach my eyes, and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Oh, that. Did you wash your hair today? Or did you just use my expensive body wash as shampoo again?" I said it with a little smirk, like I was telling a cute, teasing anecdote about my slightly clueless but lovable partner. Like we were that kind of couple, but the words hung in the air, ugly and sharp. I was trying to frame it as a joke at his expense to elevate myself, to show them, see, I'm the sophisticated one here, I have to manage him. I wanted them to see me as refined, and him as my charmingly rustic project. I just wanted to fit in. And in that 1 second, to score a few meaningless points in a game no one else was even playing, I made the man I loved the punchline. You could have heard a pin drop. The air just went solid. A couple of people gave these tight, awkward little coughs that weren't laughs. Vanessa's smile froze on her face, then just kind of melted away. I looked at Silas. He had stopped halfway to the kitchen. He didn't look angry. He didn't look hurt, not in a way I recognized. He just looked blank, like a switch had been flipped and all the light behind his eyes went out. It was a shattering kind of stillness. He stood there for what felt like an eternity, with the whole room staring at him, at the invisible stain my words had left on him. Then, very slowly, he turned, walked back to his chair, and sat down. He didn't say a word. The rest of the dinner was a blur of excruciating silence. The conversation tried to restart, but it was forced and limped along in fits and starts. I felt 100 pairs of eyes on me, judging. I tried to catch Silas's eye, to give him a little "I'm sorry" look. "Can you believe I said that?" shrug. But he never looked at me. He just stared at his plate, occasionally taking a sip of water. He had completely and utterly shut down. The car ride home was the loudest silence I have ever experienced. It was suffocating. I couldn't stand it. "I was just joking, you know," I said, my voice sounding weak and pathetic even to my own ears. He didn't respond. He just kept his eyes fixed on the road, on the streetlights passing by outside his window. It was his ultimate communication-avoidant move. No fight, no yelling, just nothing. A complete withdrawal into a place I couldn't reach. It was more terrifying than any argument. "Silas, please say something." He just shook his head, a tiny, almost imperceptible movement. When we got back to the apartment, the silence followed us inside. He walked into the bedroom and I followed, my heart pounding. "Are you really this mad over a stupid joke?" I asked, a desperate edge of anger creeping into my voice now. He finally turned to look at me, and his face was just tired, so profoundly tired. "I'm tired, Myra," he said, and his voice was flat, devoid of any emotion. That was it. He took a pillow and a blanket from the bed and went to the couch. The next morning, I woke up and the apartment felt wrong. Too quiet. I got out of bed and he wasn't on the couch. I walked into our bedroom and saw it immediately. The closet door was open. His side was half empty. His worn-out boots were gone. His old digital watch wasn't on the nightstand. I ran to the bathroom. His toothbrush, his razor, his cheap bar of soap, all gone. A text message came through then, just 5 words. "Myra, we're done, I'm sorry." I tried to call. It went straight to voicemail. I checked his Instagram. The page wouldn't load. "User not found." He had blocked me, everywhere. It wasn't a slow fade or a dramatic breakup. It was a clean cut, an amputation. He had just disappeared. My first reaction wasn't sadness. It wasn't even real grief. It was pure, indignant rage. A hot, defensive fury that filled the empty spaces Silas had left behind. How could he do this? Over a joke? One stupid, misfired joke. I was spiraling, pacing the too-quiet apartment, clutching my phone like a weapon. My mind was a whirlwind of self-justification. He was being overly sensitive. He was punishing me. He was making a mountain out of a molehill. I needed someone to validate this narrative for me, to co-sign my anger, to tell me I was the wronged party and he was the one being crazy. So I called Vanessa. I launched into the story before she could even say hello, the words tumbling out in a torrent of sobs and fury. I painted myself as the bewildered victim of his insane overreaction. He just left packed his stuff and left. He blocked me. Can you believe how dramatic he's being? It was a joke. I waited for her to join in, for that familiar chorus of "Oh my God, Myra, he's lost his mind," that had patched up so many of my smaller self-doubts in the past. But she didn't. There was just silence on the other end of the line. A long, uncomfortable pause that stretched on for way too long. It was the kind of silence that isn't empty, but filled with unspoken thoughts. "Are you there?" "I'm here," she finally said, and her voice was different. All the usual breezy warmth was gone, replaced by a cautious, measured tone I'd never heard her use with me before. "Myra, listen." Another pause, as if she was choosing her words with surgical precision. "That wasn't a joke, it was cruel." The word hung in the air between us. Cruel. "Honestly," she continued, her voice gaining a little more strength, "we all felt it. The whole table went quiet because it was just mean. You didn't just tease him, you belittled him. You embarrassed him in front of everyone, just to make yourself look good." Her words hit me like a physical blow. I literally had to sit down on the edge of the unmade bed, the phone slipping in my sweaty hand. "What? No, I didn't. It wasn't like that. You know I'm not like that." "It was exactly like that," she said. And for the first time, I heard a real edge in her voice, a kind of cool disappointment that cut deeper than any anger could have. "I don't know what's going on with you, but you've been doing little things like that for months. The comments about his clothes, the way you correct his stories, we've all noticed. And that last night, that was just awful to watch." The call ended with a few more awkward pleasantries, her excuses to get off the phone painfully obvious. I was left sitting in the crushing silence of my apartment, her words echoing in my ears. She wasn't my ally. She was a witness for the prosecution. A few days later, a text came in from Maya, a mutual friend who was at the dinner. She was always sweeter, gentler than Vanessa. Her message was hesitant, full of "I hope you're okay" fluff, but then she said something that shattered what was left of my self-delusion into a million pieces. "Hey," it read, "I just wanted to check on you. This is all so awful. I probably shouldn't say this, but Silas talked to me a few weeks ago at that barbecue. He was telling me about growing up. He said his dad was a mechanic, and they never had much money. He and his 3 brothers had to share everything, even a bar of soap sometimes. He said he was always so self-conscious about it at school, terrified that people would think he was, dirty or poor. He said it was the one thing that could still make him feel like that scared little kid again." I read the message 3 times, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. And suddenly, my joke wasn't a joke anymore. It was a precision-guided missile aimed directly at the most vulnerable, deeply buried wound of his childhood. I hadn't just embarrassed him in the present moment. I had reached back into his past and resurrected his deepest, most private shame. A story he had probably only ever shared in confidence, I had weaponized. I had used it as social currency in front of a room full of strangers to buy myself a moment of acceptance. The cruelty of it, the sheer, targeted viciousness of it, finally hit me with the force of a physical impact. It wasn't about the body wash. It was never about the body wash. It was about me telling him in the clearest way possible that his past was shameful, and by extension, so was he. Weeks have bled into a month now. Silas is a ghost. He never responded to my frantic voicemails or the long, rambling emails I sent from a new account. They just exist out there in the digital void, unread. My world has shrunk to the four walls of this apartment, which feels less like a home and more like a museum of my failure. Every piece of furniture he made mocks me. The uneven bookshelf, the heavy spice rack, they're not symbols of love anymore. They're monuments to what I destroyed. My friends, well, they're gone too. Not in a dramatic, we're breaking up kind of way. It's quieter, more awkward. The invitations to brunch stopped coming. My texts to the group chat get polite, delayed responses, but the conversation never picks up. They're distancing themselves, politely and effectively. I made myself toxic, and now I'm in quarantine. Vanessa was right. I did it to get in with them, and in the end, they didn't want me either. I have nothing, so this is my life now. My nights are spent in a pathetic, self-destructive ritual. I have a fake Instagram account with no followers and a generic name. It's my window into the world I lost. Since Silas blocked me, I can't see his page, but I can see his friends. I scroll obsessively through the feed of his friend, a guy named Rick who owns a brewery. And last night I found it. It was a photo from a backyard barbecue, a group of them laughing around a fire pit. And there was Silas. He was in the middle of the frame, wearing an old, paint-splattered t-shirt and those worn-out boots I used to hate. He was holding a beer, head thrown back in a laugh so wide and genuine it physically hurt to look at. He looked free. He looked happy. He looked more like himself than he had in the entire last year with me. Rick had captioned the photo. Good friends and simple living, nothing better. Simple, that word twisted in my gut. I had spent so much energy trying to make him more complex, more sophisticated, more like them. And all I did was make him miserable. I destroyed everything good and real between us for the sake of a shallow, shiny world that didn't even want me in the end. And now, my punishment, my own personal hell, is to be a ghost on the outside looking in, endlessly scrolling through pictures of the life he's rebuilding. A life that is so much better, so much simpler without me in it.